the worship and the preaching that went on, it just was.
Felt like home.
It was, yeah, it felt
really
like home.
quick.
I feel like in my life that everything has culminated to this moment. That's where I feel.
Yeah, I feel like no matter what God has in store for us in the future, I feel like we're right where He wants us to be right now.
Exactly. My God shall supply all of your need. It doesn't matter what your need is. God's going to supply. It doesn't matter what you have need of. God already knows about it. Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Lord Willin Together podcast. I'm Andrea McCoy, the pastor of Community Chapel FWB Baptist, and this is my wife, Andrea McCoy. Say hello. And today we thought we would kick off our podcast by sharing our testimony and our journey of how we ended up at Community Chapel.
Got to start from the bottom.
Start from the bottom. Now we're here. So, you know, we met in high school and we graduated in 2007 to date ourselves.
It feels like yesterday and 40 years ago at the exact same time. Especially since we have a 14-year-old now who's like nearing the time of when we met.
Yeah.
Like when you really think about that, it actually, it's unsettling.
We were 16 years old when we started this journey of life together. We got married in 2009 in our first year of college. 2008.
That's on camera.
That's on caught. Yes, 08. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I do go between was it 08 or 09 in my mind all the time.
I do that all the time.
So, but because we graduated in 07, so the fact that we got married the year after, but we did.
Yep.
It's true.
So I started in the ministry in 2009. May of 2009, I accepted my call to preach. And the Lord, moved in our lives in different ways. And in 2017, we started feeling called to become a pastor. And that was
You did.
Yeah, I started feeling the call to become
I started
a pastor.
feeling terrified.
Yes. And so we journeyed around a little bit. We accepted some appointments and we kind of put ourselves out there. And, it just seemed like things didn't quite line up or work out. And, we went through
We met a lot of really great people during that time.
Tremendous people, wonderful churches.
People that I would have loved to have been in church with all the time, but
absolutely,
it just didn't work out. No matter what we did, really.
Yep. I think we ministered at 5 different churches in a couple months, and we had some difficulties with selling our home. We're from the state of Kentucky, and
Eastern Kentucky
makes
a difference.
Very depressed area in some ways. I was a coal miner by trade, and it was kind of hard to break out of coal mining. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just we felt the Lord moving in our lives in a way that we needed to change. It was time to make a change. Yeah. And so, I think I put in to come down here in 2018, the first time.
To come to Tennessee?
Yeah, because we tried once, and the Near Star went on a hiring freeze. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
It might have been 2019.
Yeah,
but I think it was more 2018.
It was something around that, yes.
But,
Which it didn't matter because we had our house up for sale literally on and off from 2013 until it sold in 2020. Like on and off.
Was it 2013?
Yeah, like the first time, at least 2014.
I was thinking 2012.
Well, okay. So on and off, all of that time, we would put it on. We would have a ton of people come look at the house, and it just was never the right fit. And then we would get upset, and we'd be like, you know what? We're just going to stay here. And then we'd take it off for a while, and then we put it back on.
Yep.
So it was that teaches you patience. Oh, my goodness, the patience that. And eventually you just start to think to be happy with whatever God's given you. And you start to just be like, you know what? Maybe this is just me. Maybe this isn't what we're supposed to do. But it's all about God's timing.
Yeah.
How many times do we talk about that?
Absolutely. And, in a lot of ways we felt stuck. And it's like you said, that after so much of that stuckness and kind of fighting through bitter feelings. I mean, to be honest, you do learn that patience lesson, and and it's hard to describe that in 5 minutes of a conversation
Right.
of all the struggles that we actually went through. And that's kind of not our point of this part of our testimony. And we may cover more parts of our testimony in the future. But the main thing is that, we did come to a place of, like you said, of kind of acceptance of maybe this is just what the Lord has. I wanted to be a pastor, but it seemed like it never worked out. And it seemed like, we faced a lot of adversity in those moments,
I'm thankful. I'm actually so thankful, though, that God sort of like slammed that door shut. It wasn't something that he was like, here, fine. If you think this is, what it's going to be, because what he actually had planned out for us was so much better. And I think that if we had gotten ahead of ourselves, like we kind of wanted to, we didn't know. We thought you felt like, we were being called into the ministry. And I remember definitely not being gung-ho on that. That it was really difficult for me to come to terms with that. But, not being able to do it at the time was really rough. And you start to question, you're like, what am I doing wrong? Maybe that's not what, you start to go down the, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with us that this won't happen.
Yeah. Why doesn't God like us?
Yeah. And then you really, it's just all about God's timing. God saves us from so many things that we think we want or we think we need, but it's just not time for it because something better is in the future.
Absolutely.
Because if we had moved to those places, there's probably very little likelihood we would be here now.
No, yeah. I mean, the Lord can do anything, but if we had our way, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And, I tell our church that all the time is like, I'm glad I didn't have my way. All of those hardships and those stuck feelings and, all of the hours that I worked to keep us afloat in depressed markets and things like that with coal and hunting jobs at times, which the Lord never laid me off in all of that time.
It felt like you were never home, though, during our little boys' growing up.
I missed a lot. I missed a lot of our kids' upbringing and different things, driving long distances and things to get to work. But God's seen us through all of it.
Yeah, we never had to beg for food, and we never were homeless. I mean, if as down and out as we were, like our kids had everything they needed. We had everything we needed. We had a wonderful church that we were going to, my home church that I still miss greatly and love when we can visit.
Yep.
You don't really know how hard it is to be without a home church until you're without a home church, which is another fun part of our story.
And that honestly became the biggest obstacle. Like, I wanted to be a pastor, and we did look through churches to go to in different states and things like that because, a lot of our local churches, they had long-standing pastors and things. And
that was something really weird about moving here is like back home, you don't just like churches don't change pastors hardly ever.
Right. And, it got to a point where I had preached so long where we were at, I preached from 2009 to 2020. And, we had made a lot of relationships with churches that were near us, and we evangelized, and that kind of become what I was feeling like God was calling, for is just, maybe I'm just supposed to evangelize, and that's just supposed to be what I'm going to do for the Lord. And that, became okay at a point. And so when it actually, the door opened to come this way, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
I got a job at a zinc mine down here in Tennessee, and it wasn't,
took a giant pay cut,
huge step back in my career.
Yeah.
I had a lot of certifications and had took a lot of classes.
It was hard to feel like you knew a lot about mining to come here and be treated like you knew nothing about mining. Yes. That was hard for you. I know. I witnessed that firsthand.
They treated me like I was just a brand new miner off the street, and it hurt my pride in a lot of ways. Yeah. But leaving that established ministry to come here, leaving, the pastor that I loved in a church that I loved very dearly, that was extremely hard at the end of it.
That was very hard for me. It felt like, which we did leave our family, a lot of family.
Yeah.
Some family thankfully was here, which was another blessing in disguise because had we moved to these other places, we would have had no family there.
No family whatsoever.
But leaving our home church, I had been going there since like 95. I was born in 88, so you can do the math there. it was very sad. And there was even times at the start. Do you remember when we would be like, it wouldn't be so bad if we got up on Sunday morning and drove in and and you know,
we did do that.
We did some, but I mean that would have been rough. Yeah. But we even thought about it, like that's how bad we missed it and how hard of a time we were having finding anything that even felt remotely like what we were looking for.
Yep. And so, you know, we inevitably took our trip to come down here and look around and things, and we moved in on Halloween, oddly enough, which it's funny because when we moved, I didn't even realize it was Halloween, and so here we are pulling stuff off a U-Haul. Some friends of ours and some family members were helping us pull all of our stuff off this U-Haul. It's getting dark. It's getting late, so it had been a terribly long day. You know, Andy drove my truck with just stuff packed out of the windows and everything. And here I've got this U-Haul that we barely got the door back open.
And we had to leave stuff at the house. I mean, when you move states and you just want to do it in one big trip, like if it doesn't fit, it just, you don't get to take it. It's not ours anymore.
Yeah. And so we had kids, you know, coming up to us while we're packing stuff off
the
U-Haul.
Who comes up to people who is pulling something off of a U-Haul and says trick or treat? I'm like, bro, lend a hand.
We don't even do trick or treat on a good day.
We don't even do Halloween. So we was like, you know, but I don't know.
So, you know, we moved to Tennessee in Maryville, and, you know, I started my job.
Maryville.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful city. And we started the journey of trying to find a church that kind of fit our needs and our family and our beliefs and all of those things. And fighting through that also is that in taking that step back, I was on a 7-on, 7-off schedule. You know, I worked, you know,
It really was a 7-on, 7-off because you were always trying to work a little more.
Yeah, I'd pull 9 or 10 days.
It was even longer than that.
12-hour shifts. So, you know, 2 Sundays and 2 Wednesdays a month, I couldn't make it to a service. And so, so trying to find a church that way, and then trying not every church does a live broadcast. So some you could look and see if you wanted to visit, and some you were just looking it up on Google Maps, trying to figure out, does this church actually exist?
That this was in 2020.
Yeah, COVID as well. I always forget.
It was a rough going.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lot of churches, I don't even know if they had started getting back together again.
Some of them folded their doors, you know, at that time. So it was tough all the way around. It was a really hard time, which is
online services weren't that popular even until
2020. I mean, not nobody, but only
if it wasn't
churches.
A mega church, basically it was the only church that was you know, doing that a lot.
So, you know, that was God's interesting timing, really, is that he, of all the opportunities that would have made sense to us to have moved in, he moved us in the middle of COVID.
I know. Like, who would have thought that that would have worked out like that? But, we went and looked at houses, and it was a lot to do it with COVID protocol and all of that stuff. It was overwhelming to move and sell during that time. But the Lord provided.
He provided. And, you know, my great passion in life is the ministry and preaching. And so that whole first year of visiting churches,
I would send you out.
Yeah, you come sometimes, and then sometimes we got so disheartened.
I went to a couple that was a little odd, and it started to make me a little bit nervous. I was like, why don't you check it out? If it's good, we'll go as a family. Yeah. And if not, then you'll know.
So we, you know, we did that for a year, a year solid.
That it's hard for me to even remember that time. I think my mind blocked it out in a way because it was so hard. I mean, it was great because we moved, and it was almost like, because of the hard parts, we were almost like, was we even supposed to do this? Like, there was a little bit of a question mark.
By the end of that year, I was really being like, maybe we messed up. I mean, things started going better. You know, I worked 4 months in a job that I didn't really want for a company that treated me really well, that I enjoyed working for. But you know, after that 4 months, I got a better job and had the opportunity to go back to school, and
Yeah, that was a huge blessing.
Yeah. And so all of that really worked out. But it was the church part that wasn't working out that really made me worry, because we moved in October of 2020, but we didn't really get a church that we, attended regularly until July of 21 when we moved to Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when we started.
We were renting in Maryville, and then
we purchased a home
bought
closer
a home,
to
work. Right before the market went nuts, right on the hinge of when you could still buy affordably. Yeah. We bought a home in Strawberry Plains.
Yep. And there was a church that was nearest there that we attended for some time. We actually took membership at some point. That was the first time we moved our membership from our home church.
Which felt like, that felt like a big deal to me. I had never been a member anywhere but my home church. Really. It was, yeah.
Yeah, so we, and it's in that year span of trying to find a church, that was at the time when we were, we sometimes would just get up on Sunday morning and drive in. We did that, I think, 2 or 3 times where we got up in the morning, and then a lot of times we'd go stay with some family.
I think they started to get their hopes up that we would come back, or that we would do that a lot, because they really hated it when we left.
Yeah, Brother Gary shared with me really not that long ago, that he had hoped that the Lord would bring us back that way. And that's gut-wrenching. It's heartbreaking, because we love that church so dearly, and he was such a wonderful mentor to me. But,
still is.
Oh, absolutely. He'd pick up the phone anytime I call and work through anything with me. But we spent some time at the church that was near us, and we had the opportunity to preach for the first time. It was over a year before I got to preach in the state of Tennessee. Yes. The only time
There's so many things you're saying that's either bringing it back, or maybe something I never even thought of. And that's something I had not thought of.
The only time that I preached in that first year, a little over a year, and, every church I would visit, I would introduce myself as a preacher, hoping to garner some degree of preaching appointments. And it just never really worked out or happened. And so we'd go back, and they would put us up to preach, and several of the churches back home would actually ask, if we'd come visit. But when you drive in all that way, it's hard not to just go to your home church, even though I desperately would have loved to have visited some of the churches that had, been so instrumental in my evangelism, early ministry particularly, and growing as a preacher and things. But, the Lord started letting us to preach, and we got regular appointments, and we did interview to be a pastor of that church. It didn't work out. They did find themselves a pastor while we were there, who's a wonderful man and was a wonderful minister. I think he was a great
fit. I think he was a much better fit than what we would have been.
I was not a fit. And
no,
of course,
not realistically. We wanted it to be because it was so close to home, but God knew what he was doing.
We wanted it, and I think a lot of those members wanted it too, because we did have good relationships with them.
Yeah, great people, really great people.
But it just didn't work, and it wasn't in the cards, and that just wasn't it. And their pastor now is just tremendous for them. And so we felt the unction to just go ahead and move on and praise the Lord at that time. And so this was 2022, right? I think that was. It was VBS of 2022. That was the year we went to the beach and missed VBS because we wanted to go.
Have we been to 3 VBSs? If so, then you're right.
Yes, we've been to 3. This will be...
Yes, this will be our 4th.
This will be the 3rd as pastor.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I have 2 years worth of pictures on my phone still from all the VBSs that we were pastor at.
Wow.
The first year I didn't take pictures because I wasn't the pastor. So yeah,
time do be flying.
The time is flying. So I think it was probably April, May was our first time.
We were getting ready to go on vacation. We hadn't been there like 1 or 2 times before they were getting ready to have VBS.
Yeah, I think we'd been there. It was twice on Sundays, right? We went on Sundays because I think our first Wednesday night was the Christmas in July. I think that was our first Wednesday night.
I don't know. We'd been a time or two, but I think the when our kids were in the play, I think that was on a Sunday.
It may have been, and that's a story I want to share for sure. So we visited a couple times before we ramble on too long and lose track of what we're saying. So we visited a couple times, and of all the times, even at the church we took membership at, we loved the people and we loved being there, and it was close and it's convenient, and the word was good. That was what was important, is that there was good word there, and we had an opportunity to scotch and different things. But when we walked into Community Chapel for the first time, that was the first time that Andy turned to me in the pew. I don't even think we'd been there very long in the service. And Andy turned to me and just said, this is it. Like, this is our place. And so we knew we were a fit. We did, because we were a member at a different church, we did kind of test the waters a little bit and move slowly. It was also at that time very far away from our house.
Yeah, about 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah, so it was 40, 45 minutes to get there. And so that made it difficult.
From 5 minutes to like 45 minutes.
Yeah, that made it a difficult transition. But as we started to integrate, like I said, we missed our first VBS there because we had scheduled vacation.
Which we were so bummed about, and they were too. And
yeah,
I hated to miss it, but
yeah.
So
when at some point, I think it was after the VBS, was it, or was it before that?
It was like very quickly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It feels too long if it's after. But
maybe
VBS.
It would have had to have been. But anyway,
because I knew it was July, because it was Christmas in July. That was the theme. So July of 2022.
We had been there probably 4 or 5 times total.
Not even enough to
I didn't even know
names. No names.
I knew one name.
So we come
and that was Barbara.
Yes. So we come in, and the kids are putting on a play in the old church. So, the Lord blessed this congregation years ago to grow to such a point that they couldn't accommodate everybody in the church they had. The Lord blessed them at that time to build the church that we're in now. And so the old church became the youth building,
which we thought was brand new.
Yeah, we thought it was we just thought they built it. Like it was just done. Because it looks
brand new.
And wonderfully kept, wonderful stewards of the Lord. And so we have to go to the old church for the first time, and they're having a Christmas play over there with the youth. And so we walk in with our 2 boys, didn't know anybody's name, hadn't been there very many times. And Barbara Ann comes up and was like, "Can the boys be in the play? The boys be in the play?
Can the boys be in the play?" I love her so much.
And so we were like, sure.
And I mean, even the boys were like,
yeah, they were gung-ho
they
about
loved
it.
Barbara. They just, kids take to this woman. She is like the child whisperer. Every kid loves her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think Tate was Joseph, right? And Owen was a shepherd.
Maybe. I can't even remember. So one of them was Joseph in this church's Christmas play, and we were
never
like,
practiced, hadn't showed up, didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And so Tate...
Thankfully, it was just a reading of the nativity through acting.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really mess it
up.
I'm
pretty sure it was Tate was Joseph, and then Owen was a shepherd. And so here we are, sitting in these pews and being like, this... I mean, it was just comical. Like, it's funny to be... not knowing people and no names.
And then our kids are, they're probably like, who are these kids?
They're a lead in the play, you know what I mean? Which,
funny.
Like you said, it's just a reading and it's nothing major.
That was God solidifying it,
But
He was like, look,
honestly,
y'all fit in.
It's stuff like that that really did lock us into Community Chapel. Brother Dennis was the pastor at that time. And I could have sit under Dennis forever.
Me too. You talk about he just something about him. Always telling me when he comes back now, I'm like, you're such a comforting presence. He's comforting. Yes. I wish you could be here all the time.
Yeah. And so Dennis, was the pastor at that time, and he had took the time to actually call me a few times very early on and get to know me, and gave me the opportunity to preach every now and again. And, of course, there's Brother Scott, who is our associate pastor, and was associate at that time. And so, he was wonderful to us as well. But Brother Dennis, he kind of really started the journey to where we're at now, in a lot of ways with becoming pastor and things. And so, we were blessed with the opportunities that he gave, and just the fellowship that we had. At what point did we actually take membership? That's what I'm sitting here racking my brain.
You're asking the wrong girl.
Yeah.
You know, my memory is terrible. Goodness. I don't know. I mean, probably maybe like a year before you became pastor, or was it that?
See, that's what I was thinking. I think that,
But anyway,
6 or 8 months, I think we took membership at Community Chapel. And, Brother Dennis felt the Lord lead him to step down, and, Brother Scott stepped in, and he's a wonderful minister to the Lord, and just such a wonderful man, and he does such a good job, and time went on, and the Lord had his way in that, and we inevitably become pastor of this church, and it's just a wonderful story that is so special to us, and it means so much, and
yeah,
it's indescribable, the feeling that it is to go through all of those steps, and we're just summing it up. We're not going into the gory details because we would bore you to death with it, because those things mean a lot to us. But at the end of the day, we can't communicate effectively, just all of the ups and the downs and the struggles. And to come to this place where we had looked for so long, and for you to look at me and say, I think this is it. Like, I'm sitting there in this service, and this old-timey choir, how wonderfully they do the 4-part harmony. I've never been in a church that does that. And then, just the worship and the preaching that went on, it just was...
Felt like home.
It was, it felt
really
like home.
Quick.
And for the first time since we had, left Big Creek, I felt like, we had found something.
That was, that said a lot for me, because where I had been there for so long, I really was convinced that we would never find something that truly felt like it was home to me.
Yes.
And even if something happened and God called us away from Community Chapel tomorrow, who knows what happens? Just this church has been so. It's just amazing how at home it has felt, and so comfortable, and how you feel like people feel like family, like people at my home church I had known since I was a little girl, but somehow I feel like I've known so many of these people. Like, I've just grown so attached to them. Like, Clyde is my papa, and Bernard is my papa, even though they aren't. They are.
Yeah.
Like, I just love those people so much.
The friendships that we've developed over the last, and I mean, it's only been, it's not even been 4 full years yet at this point. But it feels like we've been there forever.
Yeah, it really does.
And so it's indescribable, the feeling that is. And I know that somebody who's watching this right now has been through things, and there
maybe
are
in the middle of something.
Maybe you're in the middle of it, and maybe you're going through some really, I don't want to say dark, but some really troubling times.
It felt dark.
Yeah.
At times, hopeless.
Despairing. That's kind of where I'm going, yes. And so some very disparaging times that everybody who, might watch this has went through something of that nature. It may not be exactly our story, but you're going through something. Mm-hmm. And so what our hope is today is to encourage you, is because in all of what we went through, and, I'm talking the full, the full 12, 13 years to get from, 12 years from 2008 to 2020. Yeah. I mean, that's the full journey, right? Is to go from 2008 to struggling college kids who barely could pay rent, me working 2 and 3 jobs at different times, you working, and us going to school.
We both lost our dads.
And building up, losing my dad in 2018, you losing your dad in 2019, and
suddenly
pick each other up off the ground in those moments. Flopping states, moving from, a lot of our family and loved ones, starting completely over. And, that's one of the funny things about 2020. That's when Chris Stapleton had that song Starting Over. Remember that?
Yes.
And so our whole back and forth to Tennessee as we were scouting and finding places and all these things, preparing to move, every time we go down, that song's on the radio. And so that was kind of our theme song almost for this move. And so now that we're at Community Chapel, and we're in this place that I feel like in my life that everything has culminated to this moment. That's where I feel right now.
I feel like no matter what God has in store for us in the future, I feel like we're right where He wants us to be right now.
Exactly.
And I just want to work and do and say yes. That was something I was going to talk about, was like whenever you started talking about, your desire to be a pastor at first, I was just so not about that life because it terrified me.
Yeah.
Like I used to get physically ill to the point where I didn't know if I was going to be able to get out of the car when we would go to other churches. Like I have severe debilitating social anxiety, and it was a nightmare for me. And I still do now. And I think a lot of people probably wouldn't guess that because I do love to talk. I love to laugh. I love to joke. But when it's on me, it's like so hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was like, I just thought, Derek, there's no way I could ever be a pastor's wife. There's no way I could talk and do, and I couldn't counsel and all the things that I need to be. But, and I think in my heart, I was saying no to it before it was even time to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that in the last few years, I've just learned to just say, okay, just the Lord He'll take care of it.
Absolutely.
He's not going to lead anybody that loves and serves Him into something that they're incapable of, or that He can't give them what they need to be able to do, what He wants them to do. You just need to be willing, really.
Absolutely. And, those times were hard for me, for you to share that with me. Is one, I don't want to push you to a place where you don't want to be, but at the same time, I felt heartbroken at that this place that I wanted so bad may never happen because I need my helpmate to be a part of that. And so, and it's,
I mean, I went, but it was rough. Yeah.
It's amazing to see too, where you are now, because, the counseling that you do, and the activities that you participate in, you're in a lot of the functions that go in a church. And, what's funny is I'm the opposite, is that you stepped up to the plate and you really crush it as a pastor's wife, in my opinion. But I feel like that I wanted to be a pastor so bad for so long. And when I actually become pastor, it terrified me to such...
you had almost said, you know what, I'm okay not doing it.
I had come to a point where, like, I actually didn't want... I was afraid of the responsibility. And
I had truly, as much as I thought I knew what I was in for, until you do it, until you have been like a pastor family, you don't actually even begin to know what those pastors are truly doing and carrying. Yes. And I don't say that for us. I say that I wish that I had really grasped that and appreciated that even more in people as I've been coming up in church. You just don't. The pastor's not just there to preach a message. That's that's like such a small part of really what's going on. And it can be a lot, but it's very rewarding.
Absolutely.
And God gives such a love for those people that is really hard to explain, but it's just a love that you just want so much to do it. Like, do I get in my car sometimes at the end of Sunday and I just have to be like, because my social battery is so low and my peopling is so low, not because I don't want to, because I do deal with that really strongly. Yes. But I have such a desire to do it, which is why I keep doing it, which is why I push through it. And
And, I felt like that I really crumbled under the first parts of the pressure. I feel like that whole first year of being pastor, like I couldn't even think straight in a lot of ways, like I forgot things. My mind wasn't right.
I think it's like when you were talking about, you did that video on anxiety, like
fear of failure,
that sort of thing. You really struggled with that.
I did.
It wasn't because you weren't capable. I think you were so afraid of letting people down.
I put too much pressure on myself, and the Lord worked all of those things out. We've come to a really good spot, and our church has really stepped up in such a way that they're so active and so hungry for the Lord's work, and it's beautiful, the transformation that we have had since we've been here, because we did inherit a church that very much loved their pastor, and And, Dennis unfortunately had to step down at that time. And that was a hard transition. It was a very hard transition. And there were a lot of moving parts in it. And even once again, I felt like, well, was this right? Was this actually, where I needed to be at?
Yeah.
But now I know that like I said, I feel like we are right where God wants us to be. I feel like everything has culminated for this moment, and I'm very excited to see where God is going to take us. And so if you're watching this and you feel in despair, what we want to do is encourage you. We can't give you all the wonderful details of what God has done for us to get to where we're at, because there's just no way to share it, or what it means to us, our church family, the love of where we're at, and all the hardships that happened before this, that feeling that you have to feel at home and all these things. It's indescribable. And so we want to share a few things with you today, and we want to uplift your spirits, and we want to encourage you. And so Philippians 4:19 says, "But my God shall supply all of your needs according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." And so, God is always going to be in control.
Thank God.
And thank God that God's
thank
in
God
control.
that God's in control, not me.
So I think that one of the biggest takeaways that I have in this journey through all of the hardship that gives me the most peace in life is God is sovereign. God's will is sovereign.
Yeah.
There's nothing, when I go to the Lord in prayer, I'm not going to prayer to present God with new information.
Yeah.
God already knows. The Bible has established that God knows all things and that he knows everything that we're going to ask before we ask it. I'm not going to the Lord in prayer in these times of trouble and overwhelming feelings. I'm not giving him new information. He already has that information. He knows where you're at. I'm going for peace and relationship with the Lord. And so our primary function as Christians, as people, is to worship the Lord. I have learned no bigger lesson in my life than to know that God is sovereign and that his will is perfect. And if I just hang on to everything that God is going to, that God is going to have happen in my life, that if I just stick in to the best of my ability where he wants me to be, I'm not always there. But if I'm searching for it, I believe that he directs and he rules those reins.
Yeah.
And so his sovereignty gives me peace in knowing that it doesn't matter anything about me, but it's everything about him. And so when my focus is off of all of the trouble and the cares around me, and my focus is on worshiping God, all right, my life is to worship him. When I enter into his house, I enter in not to get the blessing. I didn't, we all want to have that service that just absolutely shakes the rafters and we just walk out crying and all these things. But the reason why, churches don't have those every single Sunday is because the church didn't show up with the purpose of worship. They come for the blessing, but you're not going to get the blessing if you're not blessing God's name. That is our function. And so God's will is sovereign. And so in this verse that Paul writes into the Philippian church, he said, my God shall supply all of your need. It doesn't matter what your need is. God's going to supply it. It doesn't matter what you have need of. God already knows about it. And so trust in God's sovereignty, and I find such a great peace in knowing that, I don't have to rely on me. It's not about me being the smartest or the best or the strongest or anything like that.
And God didn't bring us to this place because you and I are so great and we've never made mistakes and we've lived this perfect life and we just praise God better than anybody. That's not the case.
Yep. So the second verse we want to share with you is out of Psalms 127. It says, "Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain." And so the Bible continuously compares us to lively stones built unto a spiritual house. Jesus Christ being our chief cornerstone, the kingdom of God being among men, all of these things. The stone that the builders rejected, we can go on and on and on. Mm-hmm. But what our writer here, this is a Song of Degrees for Solomon, and so it says that the Lord is the builder of the house. Anything else is vain. And so Paul says that I sowed the seed, Apollos watered, but it's God that provided the increase. And so we can stress over everything around us and try to make everything just so and perfect, and it can all fall to pieces.
Yeah.
But if we take that knowledge of God's sovereignty and put our purpose into his worship, and we put God first in our lives, and I think that's the second takeaway that we want to share, is that in all of these times that things didn't work out, I think a lot of the time we weren't putting God first. You didn't want to be a pastor's wife, even though that ultimately was the call that we were getting. Now, those were not the churches apparently that we were called to be in, and that's fine and dandy. But God had to work in us to get you to that place.
Yeah, God, he has, I don't even, like when I look back even 5 years ago, I feel like a completely different person.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure 5 years from now, I'll probably feel like a completely different person. I hope God continues to work on me and fine tune me. Thank God he does. Because I definitely, I think I had a lot of tendencies that I needed to get rid of. I think there was a lot of me that I needed to get out and just let God work in me.
Yep.
And I'm not perfect by any means, but I just look back, and sometimes you look back and you're like, I can't even recognize that person anymore. And not that I was so terrible, like I wasn't like a criminal, but it's just you see such a change in yourself if you just let God. And I'm excited, honestly, for what he'll do in the future. I want him to continue to work on me.
Yep.
He's still working on me.
And absolutely. And I think that for me, a lot of my priorities were in the wrong spots. I loved preaching. I loved God's word. But I've often compared myself to being, a lazy Christian in a lot of ways. I think that, and there's a lot of ways that I failed God, particularly in those moments. I still fail him.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I feel like
I didn't mean to be like,
I didn't even think that about it. But I feel like in those moments, I for sure, like, my priorities were not right. And I think that this journey that we've had, particularly since we've been in Tennessee, like you said, the last 5 years, we're going on our 6th year here. And I think that the transformation that we've had through all of these ups and downs that we've had here, it has transformed us into, I think that our decisions in most ways, nobody's perfect, but I think in most ways we are taking decisions to be a steward of the Lord. We are in charge of his gospel, his ministry. Paul said, that it was his gospel that he was sharing, that if anybody else comes with any other gospel other than his gospel that he had given to them, we're in charge of the gospel. I have a gospel that's mine. Now, that doesn't mean that it's my interpretation of the Bible, but it is the portion that God has put upon me to work in. And so we have to make God our priority and our business. And I think that when we can do that, we can see real change happen. And prosperity is one thing when it comes from monetary instances or different things like that. But I think that prospering in the face of the Lord, I think goes so far beyond anything else. It's so fulfilling. I feel like we've prospered a lot in the Lord, and that everything else has fell into place around us.
There's a million other things that we could make a priority.
Oh, yeah.
Our lives can get so full, and sometimes we even have to take a step back and be like, is this really what I need to be focusing my energy on? And I definitely continue to need to do way better in that department, for sure. But like you said, it is so fulfilling just to do anything for the Lord. Like just getting on here and doing this, just the thought of hopefully God being able to use this for his glory in some way, teaching a Sunday school class, being involved in your VBS, talking to your friends about Jesus, like literally anything that we could do. It gives a lot of joy and a lot of contentment and a lot of fulfillment that other things in your life don't even compare to that. It's fleeting. Like other things are very fleeting, and then you're on to maybe needing the next thing, but it's different when you're working for the Lord.
Absolutely. I've seen Tim Tebow here lately a lot, being in front of Congress and different things. He's on the news and whatnot on his journey to fight for the MVP, as he calls it, the most vulnerable person. He's very big right now, and he's got a big work, I should say, right now, going towards fighting child rape and pornography and all of those things. Like, if you haven't seen it, you need to. Oh, it's upsetting. But one thing that he has said recently that has just absolutely, train wrecked me in a lot of ways, is that he made the point that we are all, as the people of God, promised a day of rest. And so on that rest, God is going to give us rest for eternity. He said, I don't want to enter into that rest well rested. He said, I want to enter in exhausted.
I heard that. I think I must have heard that, and I didn't realize that was him that said that.
And so I literally want to fall at the feet of the Master, not only because he's glorious, but because I have entered into the gates of heaven so exhausted that I am ready to rest in his presence. And that's where I want my priorities to be. And so the last verse that we will share with you here tonight before we finish up is out of Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. It says, Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. And so it doesn't matter where you're at. The same God that we served in the state of Kentucky is the same God that we serve in the state of Tennessee. And there are definitely a lot of differences in the ways the church operates. That was something that we had to get used to. The way that, they kind of, I don't want to say treat their ministers, but like the way that they approach ministry, is even different down here than what I was used to coming. But it doesn't matter where you're at, what your situation is. It doesn't matter what your lot in life is. God is in control. He is sovereign. If you put God first and that you make him your priority, everything else is going to fall into place. And that wherever you are, no matter where you are, where you're going, what your goals are, if God is first in your life, you can be strong and of good courage. And in that good courage, we can take peace in knowing that everything is going to work out for God's glory, not my benefit, not anything that has to do with me. It's going to work out for God's glory. And if God's glory becomes our priority, then all of those things, like he told King Solomon didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for a whole lot of things. He said, give me the wisdom to lead your people. I want my priority to be the gospel of God. Lord, make me not eloquent of speech that people's going to say, wow, man, he can really talk. But that the way that the gospel leaves my lips is so impactful that God be glorified in what he can do in me. And so be strengthened, that the glory of God is in you. If you today can call yourself a child of the living God, sometimes healing comes through the grave. Sometimes, hardship, it ends in a way that's unexpected. But I think that at the end of all of it, everything has always worked out better when God gets the glory in our lives. And so I hope that this encourages you here tonight, and I hope that, or as you listen, whenever this is.
Kind of late for us.
But I hope that this encourages you wherever it reaches you at. And I want to leave you with Romans 10:9 says, For if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. Maybe you've approached our video and, maybe you don't know the Lord. Maybe things are falling apart around you. Accepting God in your life is not the fix-all, right? And by what I mean to say that is that coming to Jesus for the sole purpose of paying your house payment tomorrow or whatever that might be, those are the wrong reasons, right?
Life is still laughing.
Life still laughs. However, having God in your life changes your perspective.
Absolutely.
And so have your perspective changed by accepting Jesus into your life. Confess your sins and your faults to the Lord, and he will surely hear you. And ask Jesus into your life. and he will change it. So let Jesus clean you up today. Let Jesus change your life. And I hope that this has impacted you in a way that it helps you. And so we're only going to be able to do this, Lord willing, together.
Lord willing, together.
And so
Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise.
That's right. So let's be the church and worship the Lord together. God bless.
Bye.